Art class, we are starting chapter 4, and it's titled Wait and See. Today we're going to read pages 63 through 67. Okay, without further ado, excuse me. Just before Labor Day, my great uncle Emerald Holloway stopped by the house with a surprise gift for me: cash to buy a brand new dress for my first day at Central. Everybody in the family knew that Mother was a fastidious seamstress who usually made all my clothes. But this was no ordinary first day of school, Uncle M said. The integration of the finest high school in Arkansas would happen just once in our lifetime, and I had to have a dress to match the occasion. Even one of Mother's perfectly tailored creations would not do. I had to have a store-bought dress. Mother and I took the bus downtown and searched our favorite department stores until we found the perfect outfit: a black skirt set with small bluish-green letters and numbers spread in a random pattern. The blouse had short sleeves, just right for the hot and humid early days of September. The skirt was pleated at the waist, with enough fabric to flow over my crinoline slip. The outfit looked sophisticated and smart, not too dainty. I wasn't a dainty kind of girl. I hung the skirt set in my closet to wait for the big day, September 3rd, the Tuesday after Labor Day. Labor Day marked the end of summer vacation, and my family spent the afternoon at Gilman Park. The pool was the main draw, and it was always so full of people that you could barely swim a clear path from one side to the other. My family cooked hot dogs and hamburgers on a cast iron pit in the grassy picnic area. Between pool breaks, the teenagers danced to the rhythm of and blues and rock and roll blaring from the intercom. About midday, I heard a rumor that Governor Faubus would appear on late-night television news to make a speech about Central, but I was having too much fun to give it much thought. Later that afternoon, though, I checked the newspapers: the Arkansas Gazette, the morning paper that we received daily at home, and the Arkansas Democrat, the afternoon paper that we sometimes picked up from the newsstand. Neither of them had any information about the speech. My parents didn't seem worried. They liked Faubus. They had voted for him twice before in previous elections. He was a man of the people, I had heard them say, and unlike his past opponents, he was not a strident, vocab word, segregationist. He certainly was no John Patterson, the Alabama governor who had banned the NAACP from operating in his state and welcomed the support of the Ku Klux Klan. And neither was Faubus a Marvin Griffin, the brash Georgia governor who promised to keep the schools in his state segregated come hell or high water. 3 small school districts in rural Arkansas already had been integrated peacefully in the previous 2 years with little notice. Faubus had even refused to intervene when white residents in one of the towns, Hoxie, a community with fewer than 2,000 residents in northeastern Arkansas, protested the desegregation of their schools and asked the state to step in. My parents and I had no clue that Faubus had made an about-face and was moments away from announcing a bold move that would help to write Little Rock's civil rights history. I had paid little attention to recent news coverage and was unaware that Faubus had spent much of the summer cavorting with groups of well-known segregationists. In late August, when the Mothers League filed a temporary injunction in Pulaski County Chancery Court to halt the integration of Central indefinitely, Faubus even testified as a surprise witness. He upheld the group's claims that parents were afraid to send their children to school for fear of widespread violence. He said guns and knives had been confiscated from Little Rock students. The injunction was granted, but just days later, a federal district court judge nullified it when the NAACP sent 2 of its best attorneys, Wiley Branton, a homegrown lawyer who had been involved with the successful integration of the University of Arkansas Law School in 1948, and Thurgood Marshall, the rising star who had argued the Brown case before the U.S. Supreme Court. As my family gathered at 10 p.m. in front of the television in the den to watch Faubus, none of us expected any earth-shattering news. This was my bedtime, and quite frankly, I was just eager to get to sleep so that I could be well rested for the big day ahead. About 15 minutes after the hour, Faubus appeared on screen. Like Blossom, he was a big man. He wore a dark suit and tie and spoke with a southern drawl typical of white politicians of his ilk. I listened as he droned on the first few minutes about the history of race relations in Arkansas. But at age 14, I was a busybody who found it hard to sit still for long periods, especially during rambling speeches. I was about to start daydreaming when the governor said something that caught my attention. Now that a federal court has ruled that no further litigation is possible before the forcible integration of Negroes and whites in Central High School tomorrow, the evidence of discord, anger, and resentment has come to me from so many sources as to become a deluge. There is evidence of disorder and threats of disorder, which could have but one inevitable result. That is, violence which can lead to injury and the doing of harm to persons and property. I could hardly believe my ears. Sorry, not my ears. I could hardly believe my ears. Were white men and women in Little Rock really so angry about black students attending Central that they were willing to harm us? I just wanted to go to school and get the best possible education. What was so wrong with that? The thought that people were threatening violence at first made me more angry than afraid, but I found an odd sense of comfort in what Faubus said next. Units of the National Guard have been or are now being mobilized with the mission to maintain or restore the peace and good order of this community. Advanced units are already on duty on the grounds of Central High School. I have informed Chief Lindsay, Director of the Arkansas State Police, of the developments, and he is now mobilizing a force to act as an arm of the state militia and maintaining or restoring the peace and order of the community, and to act in every way possible to protect the lives and property of the citizens of the Pulaski County. I knew I was a citizen of the Pulaski County. My parents paid taxes, they were citizens too. I honestly believed that I was included in those whom our governor had deployed the Arkansas National Guard to protect. It was shocking to think that a military unit might be necessary to keep the peace on my first day at Central, but I still wanted to go. Somehow I had gotten it into my head that Central was crucial to my future. I knew that if I could make it there, a school ranked among the top 40 in the nation, I could make it anywhere. Things would settle down eventually, once the rabble-rousers realized theirs was a lost cause, I figured. In the meantime, the National Guard would keep me safe, or so I thought. I must have been too caught up in my own thoughts to pay much attention to the last part of the Faubus speech, the part calling for a delay in integrating Central. When I closed my eyes that night, I was confident that I would be at Central the next day and that I would be safe. It would be my last night of innocence. The next morning, I woke up to news that the opening of the school was delayed. Mrs. Bates had called my parents while I was sleeping with word that the school board was asking the black students to stay at home until further notice. With the disruptive presence of the National Guard and Faubus's call for a delay, the board wanted to seek further legal resolution. My new dress would have to wait. I'd pinned so much of my hope and excitement on this day. Now all I could do was wait and wonder. It was beyond frustrating. The day seemed to drag with little information from the adults involved. Daddy went to work as usual, and Mother spent much of the time on the telephone, answering questions from concerned relatives and friends. She also checked in with Mrs. Bates for updates. The neighborhood was dead still. Most of my friends returned to Man that day, so I couldn't even talk to them on the telephone. The legal matter was resolved by the early afternoon. U.S. District Court Judge Ronald Davies, the magistrate who had nullified the initial injunction, ordered the school system to proceed the next day with integration at Central. He said he was not swayed by the sentiments of the segregationist. I have a constitutional duty and obligation from which I shall not shrink, he said. Later that afternoon, Superintendent Blossom called a last-minute meeting with as many parents as could attend and instructed them to send their children to Central the next day alone. The presence of their parents might incite even more trouble at the school, he told them. My parents could have decided right then that the risks were too high and withdraw me from Central. I'm grateful that they did not. Instead, they remained calm and resolute. In a rare newspaper interview, Daddy later explained to a Gazette reporter why he didn't back down. Only one thought ever crossed my mind about the whole thing. She had a right to go there. My tax money is not separated from the rest of the tax money. There was no reason for her to pass one high school to go to another. And that's where we end, ladies and gents. Okay, get ready for the quiz tomorrow, and then we will keep on reading to see what happens on their first day at Central.